Reptilian shapeshifters are behind ISIS, the Federal Reserve and Sesame Street. This is the False Flag Nation podcast.
And welcome back to another episode of False Flag Nation, podcast where we delve into conspiracy theories, the occult, and all things esoteric. This is Joseph DeMarco. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Mr. William Revere.
All right, let's do this.
This week we got a particularly crazy episode for you, and it's about a show everyone is talking about right now. It's Making a Murderer on Netflix. And if you have not seen this, this is probably the most insane roller coaster mindfuck of a crime story that has come out on television in a long time. And it's all true. I mean, at least what you saw in the documentary is true, but that's not the whole story. And it's the more you learn about Steve Avery, the chief suspect of this story out in Wisconsin, the crazier it gets, and it's just been a source of controversy ever since it came out in December. And we're going to be deconstructing what went on and what we really think happened, and whether or not Stephen Avery deserves to be in prison right now. So, spoiler alerts if you have not seen it yet. We are going to be meticulously deconstructing the story. So if you don't want to ruin it, stop listening and watch the show and then come back. Otherwise, sit tight, and because shit's gonna get weird. But Will, I think you have some announcements first, stuff going on in the news.
Yeah, before we jump into the Stephen Avery Making a Murderer event that we're going to have here, there's a couple quick things that I thought were noteworthy, to say the least. So, for one, local news, in the tri-state area at least, Chris Christie, who we mention here mostly in jest, actually did something admirable. Yeah, he did something admirable. It's pathetic that this actually had to take place, but Chris Christie introduced a right to shovel bill in New Jersey, and what this essentially did was basically allow teenagers and young adults it gave them the right and ability to shovel snow during winter storms without having to have a license from the state of New Jersey, as well as other municipalities and town and local approvals to shovel snow in their own fucking state.
Wow, that was awful nice of him.
Yeah, wasn't that? But honestly, you got to give him props for that, because you could see Obama making an argument like, "Oh well, this will take a tax from our unionized public works department." So you could see the argument against bullshit like this.
Yeah. Well, when you said right to shovel and Chris Christie in the same sentence, I initially. My mind immediately jumped to right to shovel powdered sugar donuts down his throat, but I think I was somewhere on the right track. There's a white-colored powdered substance involved, but I just am not surprised something like this happened in New Jersey. That whole tri-state area is just it's just a festival of red tape and bureaucracy, and it is. It's good to see Chris Christie do something positive for a change. I mean, did you know he got kicked off an Amtrak train a few months ago?
No,
why? About this?
No, what happened?
He got kicked off the Amtrak quiet car. Which, if you look at where the Northeast Corridor is, this probably happened in his own state. I'll have to confirm this. He got kicked off the Amtrak quiet car for being too loud while he was sipping he's like shouting at his staff while sipping a strawberry milkshake from McDonald's. And the conductor has told him to get up and get out because he was disturbing the other passengers on the train.
So you literally can't make that shit up.
No. A strawberry shake from McDonald's. God almighty. Oh, the jokes just write themselves.
Yeah, really. But yeah, I thought, like I said, you got to give them props for that. I mean, that's just common sense nonsense bullshit from the people in New Jersey. I mean, that's...
Was there previously a test you had to take to...
No, it was basically there were cases where groups of kids who would go door to door would actually get stopped by the police, and they would have to stop what they're doing, and they couldn't accept funds from people for their services.
Which is only fair. I mean, they're not paying taxes on their labor.
Exactly. They were requiring them to have some sort of license or paperwork.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like the lemonade stand stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, Trenton, or whatever the fuck the capital of New Jersey is, has to get their fair share.
Yeah.
It's only fair. Is it Newark? I can't remember what the capital of New Jersey is.
I don't know.
I hope to God it's not Newark. I feel bad for them. Or Camden. New Jersey. So what else is going on in the world? Well,
in a more serious tone here, there's been another. How do I put this delicately? Land confiscation by the wonderful U.S.-funded state of Israel.
What happened now?
380 acres in the Jordan Valley area of the West Bank.
Okay.
Has been zoned off and is in the process of being... a discussion is being had as to how they're basically going to take this land over. And like we've talked about before, put in new apartment settlements for the state of Israel.
Now, 380 acres. I mean, yeah, that's a fair amount of land. When you're talking about compared to the size of a country, that's not a lot of land. But this is such a volatile area. I can't see how this cannot raise a shitstorm with the Palestinian authorities and other countries like maybe the UN or whatnot who are not very sympathetic to Israel. What has the reaction been to this?
There's been official comments from the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
Ban Ki-moon.
Yeah, he surprisingly denounced it publicly and called it a violation of international law, which I thought was quite impressive that he actually made that comment. But 380 acres might not sound that large for some area in the Midwest of the United States, but for a country the size of, or a state, I guess, if you want to call it the size of Israel, and especially the areas like the West Bank, that's a huge amount of land. And the other thing that we don't really grasp is the overpopulation in that area too. There's a ton of people. So this would definitely have an effect on
people being displaced. You mean?
Yeah, there's numbers that I'm not comfortable throwing out there because it's just, I guess, guessing from a lot of people in the news. But this is going to affect probably between 20 and 35,000 people.
Holy shit!
Yeah, so it's very dense in terms of civilians on both sides.
Good times. The party just never stops in Palestine. Right. There's just always something going on.
And it's it should be noted that this is all basically funded by U.S. taxpayers.
Yeah, I think the U.S. gives Israel I think like $2 billion a year, something like that.
Yep.
That's got to be wrong. It's got to be more than that. I remember hearing that figure somewhere, but it's a lot. It's a lot. I think they give more in foreign aid to Israel than anyone else, and most of it goes to the military, like the IDF. But we will be
Yeah,
keeping
so
our finger on the
that's
pulse.
more of the.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I cut you off there. There was a bit of a lag, Skype. But
yeah, it's more of the doom and gloom. You know, where is this headed? I think what's going to end up happening is uh, Israel essentially wants to cut Palestine off from, well, the West Bank off from Jerusalem, which is very important for Palestine, as they want Jerusalem directly to be part of their own independent state.
yeah.
So this is more of the antagonistic attempts to just bully the Palestinian people. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure 2016 isn't going to be a good year for them.
It's a complicated situation. We're going to be following it closely over the year. I'm sure it's going to get weirder before it gets better.
Yeah, definitely.
But without further ado, I think it's time to delve into the Avery Odyssey in the lovely state of Wisconsin and find out how exactly the making of a murderer took place there. All right, so yeah, this is a 10-part series about a pretty insane murder mystery set in Montowac County, Wisconsin. And it involves this family clan called the Averys, who own a salvage yard. They're kind of this rednecky family, somewhat outcasts in the community. And put a long story short, this man, Stephen Avery, does 18 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He's exonerated in 2003 based on DNA evidence. There's going to be a massive settlement. He's supposed to win millions of dollars. And then in 2005, they find Teresa Hallbach, this girl from an Auto Trader magazine who had come to look at some of the cars for sale on his property. They find her dead on his property. What remains of her on his property after a long manhunt. And then he's right back to square one. He's on trial for murder. And spoiler alert, he eventually goes away for it. And one of his other family members is implicated as a accessory to murder. Or no, he's charged with murder as well. He's a participant. And then he goes away as well. His nephew, who's like 17 at the time. But there's so much controversy with this story because there's clear evidence that the cops planted evidence there.
Yeah, that's one of the most telling things. I mean, first of all, the whole documentary plays out like an episode of Law and Order SVU, where you're like, holy shit, this can't be fucking real.
Yeah, every episode you're like, no, what? You're like, fuck that guy, and the next episode you've switched sides. You're like, he fucking did it.
At its most simple, that the documentary is fucking entertaining, but once you realize that it's real and it is fact, you're like, wow, holy shit, this is like absolutely the biggest mind fuck I've ever witnessed. Yeah. And it's just absolutely insane. So where do we begin? Where do we start talking about this?
Well, I think people listening, if you haven't seen it already, go see it. Like, stop listening right now and just set aside a couple days and watch this. It's 10 hours. Each episode's an hour long, and just watch that, because we're going to be deconstructing this in detail here, and it's just going to piss you off if you don't understand it. But honestly, I can give you my conclusion now, and I can break down why I think the way I do.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we hear what your conclusion is based off of what not only the documentary has to show, but also some recent findings and some recent events just this past couple.
That's the thing, is I don't think you can rely solely on this documentary to make an informed conclusion about this, because apparently they left out all kinds of evidence
Right.
in this documentary, like very pretty big fucking deal evidence against Stephen Avery, because this documentary was a lot more sympathetic to the defense than to the prosecution.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I mean, the prosecution was doing some pretty corrupt things, in my opinion, and they should be judged harshly for this. But based on what I have learned, I think Stephen Avery is guilty. I think he's probably a sociopath. But I also think there's a lot of corruption in the police department in Montowac County, in the sheriff's department. I think in the wake of his release, in that 2-year period, he went to, if you haven't figured this out by now, Stephen Avery went to jail for 18 years for a sexual assault he did not commit. And he was exonerated using DNA evidence, which that technology had improved quite a lot in the 18 years he was in prison. He was arrested in 1985. DNA technology sucked back then. 2003, they run some tests, and they prove like 100% conclusively he did not do it. So they let him free, and then this guy's a hero. The whole, like, he's on television. People are interviewing him. He's suing the county and the sheriff's department. He's going to win like $30 million. And it seems like everything's completely turned around for him. Like justice is finally being done. And then they find this dead girl who is missing on his property. And he has no explanation for why this girl's remains are on his property, and he's arrested, and he's a suspect in the murder. And then his nephew comes out, goes into graphic detail and a confession about how he did it and how he helped his uncle do it. And I think he did do it. I think he did do it. I think his nephew probably did help him do it. But I also think in the wake of that release from prison, he was just like this martyr. He was in prison almost 20 years for something he didn't do. The police were concerned that there was so much public sympathy for him that they were not confident they could convict him with the evidence that was there, so they planted additional evidence to augment their case against him. So they knew he was guilty, but they didn't think they could prove it based on what they had. So they added some more evidence on top of it, and they damaged their credibility in the process.
Right.
And based on our legal system as it exists, as wrong as it might be, maybe he should go free. Maybe the evidence that was legitimately there maybe everything should have been inadmissible, because they corrupted the entire judicial system by doing that. Like the ends do not justify the means. That's what exactly. I think about this whole thing.
Yeah, I think I arrive at a different conclusion, but I definitely agree. I think based on the evidence that was presented in the trial, like you said, it's very clear that there was, at least to some degree, a level of setup, like you said, by the police department there.
Yeah.
A couple of the key things that the documentary dives into is the .22 caliber bullet, which is found in Stephen Avery's garage, which coincidentally has Teresa's DNA on it. What's compelling about this is that if the murder supposedly occurred in the garage, there is no ounce or evidence in the slightest bit of any other blood or DNA or any other proof that Teresa was in that garage. So,
well, that's one of those things that the filmmakers have been accused of being deceptive with, because the defense or the prosecution claimed that they had bleach and they cleaned up everything afterwards, and that was not in the documentary. So
right, but I don't know if they said that they had, because it's one thing if they claim that it was cleaned up with bleach, but if there was evidence of bleach being in the garage, and even if that's the case, is that enough to
bleach by itself? No, but
no.
I mean bleach in the context of a room where they think someone was killed. Yeah, that's pretty suspicious.
Right, but I believe the autopsy and some of the testimony from the nephew is that she was shot in the head. So this would certainly suggest that there would be a substantial amount of DNA evidence elsewhere on the property.
Like blood spatter, you mean?
Exactly.
Well,
and I think that the bullet was found, but it was found elsewhere and it was planted in his garage.
Well, that's the thing. The thing is, like, when they're searching their property, they kept the whole family off their property for 8 days. Like,
yes.
That's unprecedented. That never happens. Like, that's ridiculous. They don't force you off your property while they're searching a crime scene. I mean, usually depending on what it is. And they certainly never keep you off your property for 8 fucking days. What were they doing for 8 days? Granted, it's a big piece of property, but still. And they don't find this bullet until the second search, because they went back several times.
And I believe that was months later too.
Yeah,
because that was the original investigation was in end of October, beginning of November.
Yeah,
and they didn't find the .22 caliber bullet until I believe it was sometime in February or March.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that in and of itself is ridiculous. But a point you made, too, is that, 8 days is kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't... Normally, people of intelligent abilities would probably question that and lawyer up immediately. But one of the issues that this documentary shows is that when you're poor and when you're basically stupid, you can be manipulated and you can be bullied by the police department.
Yeah, well, the other thing that definitely struck me as planted evidence was the blood in the car.
Yeah,
like they found blood in the trunk and on the dashboard of the car, which they matched to Teresa Halbach, the murder victim. And it was her car. They found it in some far-off corner of the property. Now, what I don't understand is if she was killed in the garage, why is her blood in the car, which is like several hundred, like a football field away from the murder scene?
Right.
It doesn't make sense. Like, what did he carry her to the car and then carry her back and then dispose of the body in a bonfire, which is where they found it?
Right.
That makes no logical sense.
And she certainly wasn't shot in the car because there would be, like you said, substantial DNA evidence.
Yeah, and gunshot residue and all that. But the thing that's really kind of proves in my mind that the blood was planted in the car was that there was a sample of his blood, of Avery's blood, on file in the evidence room of the sheriff's department from his original conviction back in 1985. And if you look at the logs of who had access to this blood sample, you have a Sergeant James Link. James Link is one of the same officers who searched his property.
That's correct.
And the day that they find the blood, there's a log where everyone who enters and leaves the crime scene is supposed to log in. And there's no record of him signing in, but there's a record of him signing out. So something, connect the dots. Something shady is going on here. Like again, like I said, I'm convinced they're nervous they can't put him away. So this guy went back to the evidence room and got a sample of his blood and is painting it where he thinks it'll do the most damage to him, so they can be sure he goes away.
Wasn't that an incredible scene, though, too? I mean, that was just straight out of Law and Order when you have the defense attorneys and they're literally opening up the box and the evidence, and like your heart is racing, and then you see a hole. I mean, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Really spectacular.
It's a very well-made film. It's a very well-made film. It's just there are very important things they left out of it, which bothers me, and you don't realize it if you're using this as your sole source for deciding what's going on with this story. But then there's the issue of Brendan, the nephew. Now, what do you think? What were your thoughts on Brendan?
God. Honestly, God, I don't think that he was involved in it. I think that he's a stupid kid, and I think that he was confused, and I think that he basically just made up a story and didn't realize what he was getting himself into, and I think that's made abundantly clear multiple times throughout the questionable interrogation sessions. But like I said, I think he kind of just fabricated this entire story and didn't realize that anything would come of it. And it's definitely suspicious at times, but the only real evidence that they have of him being there and him being involved in the case is his own statements, which were made definitely under questionable circumstances.
Yeah, if you watch the interrogations, he's not a bright kid. I think he has an IQ of like around 70, they said, and the police are manipulating him into saying certain things, and they basically trick him into admitting to his mom that he did this on the prison phone, knowing that those calls are being recorded. And then they're like, there's something we can use, the prosecution can use in court, that conversation. And I don't know. I think he did. I think just because he's intellectually disabled, it doesn't mean he's not capable of doing horrible things. I think, and that defense cuts both ways, that he's kind of a simpleton. If he's not that smart, it means his uncle could have manipulated him into cooperating with him as well.
Right, and we're talking about spectacular moments in that documentary. One of the other moments that was just like jaw-dropping was the prosecution's witness of his cousin, right? That's the girl who takes a stand, who is testifying against him, and she basically is there to make a statement that Brendan told her that there were feet in the fire and that he was involved in killing and burning the corpse, and then she basically starts crying on the podium and says that she made the whole thing up. That was one of those like holy shit Law and Order moments that you can't even make up.
She effectively made it up, and if it was Law and Order, that's the part where the prosecution would have said they would have begun to treat her as a hostile witness at that point. I just think they figured that she's not intellectually competent enough to understand the ramifications of what she's doing. So they just kind of dismissed it, and they did get her to, after some clever questioning, I think, say what they wanted her to say. But what really struck me about Brendan's trial was how shitty his lawyer was.
Oh God!
Like his defense attorney, it comes out, was really kind of working for the other side.
Right.
He violated his oath of loyalty to his client, and regardless of whether or not you think, Brendan's guilty, and I think he is. Again, this is an issue. The ends do not justify the means. He's like working with this investigator.
Michael O'Kelly.
Who gets him to like draw a diagram and go into elaborate detail about this story, about what they did. And they see these emails back and forth between this investigator and Brendan's attorney, and he's like, the Avery family is evil incarnate. This home is where the devil resides in comfort. Like, it's time to end this gene pool now. And like this is his defense attorney he's saying this to. He's supposed to be on his side.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if you were accused of something and your attorney is conspiring against you and like basically handing the prosecution their case for them.
Yeah, he essentially was working exactly right. He was working for the prosecution, and I mean, this is more evidence that just stacks up, and you feel sympathy for them. You feel sympathy for the Avery family, and you get again that sense that the community and the legislative branch of that community is out to get this family.
Yeah, it's and even if you think he whatever, he deserves it. Like, the thing, what happens when they do it to someone who doesn't deserve it is much. Because if it can happen to the Avery clan, it could happen to someone else. Where does it end? Where does that? How many disastrous scenarios does that door open to?
Exactly. It also brings up the issue of, does someone's actions as a minor warrant them being imprisoned for the rest of their life? So the documentary ends in a particularly powerful note with Brendan basically asking for help from prison. And he says that he made a false statement under duress, and it's kind of compelling at the end. But it also raises the point of, can people change? And even if he is guilty, does he deserve to spend, 80 years of his life in jail?
I think they said he'll be eligible for release when he's 68.
Right.
58 or something like that. But like most of his life would be in jail. And it's just, I don't know, it raises a lot of, the documentary as it is raises a lot of questions, more questions than it answers in a lot of ways. And then you find out afterwards there's all this vital stuff that was left out of the documentary. Yeah. Like, you have this interview with Steve Avery's fiance, Jody, who you see in the documentary a lot, and she's like standing by him and insisting that he's innocent, and calling and visiting him. And then you see this interview, and she's claiming that she made it up, and that Stephen was threatening her behind the scenes, and that she was terrified, and that's why she was putting on this show for the camera, and that Steve used to beat him, and that she thinks he's guilty. Like, she's gone on the record saying that.
Wow.
And then you find out that he Steve Avery had been calling Teresa Halbeck at her job at the Auto Trader magazine, like repeatedly asking them to send her out to take pictures, and that Teresa had been telling her coworkers she was creeped out by him.
Right? Didn't he mysteriously just get out of the shower every time she
said because she had been there several times before to take pictures. She was like you said in the beginning, a semi-regular visitor there, and he would just happen to walk out of his trailer just in his towel, just like, all right, just took a shower there. Don't mind me. But
I think we can both agree, and I think all the viewers can agree that there's something up. Like, he definitely is not completely innocent. He's definitely a creep. There was definitely a level of not stalking, but just obsessed with Teresa in many levels. But I can't say without a shadow of doubt he's completely guilty. I really can't. I mean, there's too much evidence of foul play from the police department, and I think honestly that skews the entire case, and I think there should have been a mistrial.
I think there should have been a mistrial as well, but I still think he's guilty. I think because of all this other stuff that was not presented in the documentary. The day Halbeck went missing, Avery apparently called her 3 times, and twice he *67'd his number to hide his identity.
Right.
To do that, so Avery had purchased handcuffs and leg irons like the one his nephew describes a few weeks before Teresa's killed, and Avery claims, "Oh, he's using this. I'm just using that with the wife here. We get frisky in the bedroom there." But you just connect all these dots, and it doesn't look good for him. Will, I gotta be honest. I know. I think our first instinct in a lot of situations like this is to think the cops are totally corrupt, and it sounds like at least a few of the officers in this department are, but it doesn't look good for him. I really don't see how the jury could have arrived at any other verdict.
And that's an interesting point too. We're looking at this, hindsight is 2020. We're looking at this with the evidence neatly given to us in documentary form. It would have been very interesting to see more opinions from the jury, and I'm sure that there's going to be a book about this case written by members of the jury.
I don't know about the jury. The prosecutor,
Kent, the guy who talks like this, the very effeminate voice.
The sexting.
The lead prosecutor, the DA for that county, who prosecuted Stephen, a story came out that he was sexting like 30 women. He had to resign afterwards. Which, if you hear this guy's voice, it makes it like 10 times funnier, because he talks like a little bit like Beaker from the Muppets. There's no one in this show has a normal voice. No one.
Yeah, you're right. Even the 2 directors, they're freaking weird. Have you seen the interviews with those 2?
I have not seen the interviews with the directors.
They're what I believe to be a lesbian duo, and one of them speaks like she has veneers or something. She's just bizarre, like lisp, and they have weird names too. I never liked the name Moira, but I'm pretty sure one of their names is Moira, and I don't like that name.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was definitely necessary to state. But getting a little back on track, it at all levels it's disturbing, to say the least. And I think if you listen to the defense attorneys and their statements made after they lost the case, I think those two probably had the best sense as to if he was guilty or not. And they both were unable to make a call. And I believe one of them says at the end that he hopes that he's guilty because he has trouble sleeping at
Sorry
night.
about that.
Based off of the evidence. So,
Yeah.
you know, in the end, I don't think that there was enough evidence to put him away. I think that there was a skewed and manipulated evidence, and the police department was corrupt. And I think at that point there should have been a mistrial. And as there are many factors that are pointing in the direction of his guilt, I think that there's even more factors pointing in corruption, and I don't think you could make a 100% definite guilty verdict on it. So I think he should be exonerated. Maybe that's not the right word, but I think he should be allowed to have another trial. And, you know,
Yeah, I would.
maybe in a different town, maybe in a different state even.
Yeah, I would be okay with him having another trial. I don't think he should be exonerated. Because, I mean, that would be, him getting out of prison. I don't think that's... Like I said, I'm like 95% sure he's guilty. But I think that the cops, all of them, should go on trial too. And I'm pretty sure that has not happened. I said, like, all of these various sergeants, everyone up to the DA at the time he was first arrested, the sheriffs who received the evidence in 1995 that he was innocent of that sexual assault and sat on that evidence for 8 years, they should go on trial.
Right.
I would bet this was approved, the planting of evidence, from the very highest levels of the sheriff's department. There should be a thorough investigation there. I don't think anything has come of that. I think they're just letting sleeping dogs lie, and they don't want to even open the door to a chance that he would get let in, because he's appealed his case several times. It's been denied each time. Same with Brendan. And I think they just want to keep it that way.
And also, Len Chisinski, Brendan's first lawyer, he should, at the very least, be disbarred.
Sure. I would support that.
And society and the internet has spoken on his Yelp page, which is actually hilarious. There's thousands of death threats to him and his family, which I find actually kind of humorous. But
well, not to his family, just to him for being a shitty defense attorney. Like, how would anyone ever trust him again after that?
Yeah, I mean, what a douchebag. So even if it took 10 years, he's getting his shit. So.
Yeah. Steve Avery, just to wrap this up, has released a statement claiming he's named a few people he thinks did do it. And that was something at least according to what the documentary showed us, the defense did not do a good job of naming suspects of who could have done it, as opposed to, just saying my client didn't do it. And Avery has accused both his brothers, one of whom appears in the show, like his older brother, who's kind of weird. He's apparently had a few stalking charges against him, sexual assault. His brother-in-law, Scott Tadick, that's Brendan's father.
Right.
He claims that he apparently has been arrested for like sexual assault several times. seems like everyone who lives on this property has some sort of criminal record. Brendan's brother, Bobby Dassey, who gave testimony that helped put Stephen away. It's just, and what something that struck me about that, just the chance that that might be true, is that just the complete lack of emotion on like the brother's face, on Brendan's brother's face when he's talking on the stand,
right?
And everything. It's just totally blank look on his face. Like, he knows what's at stake. He knows his uncle's going away for life. He knows his brother's probably going to go away for life. Just total blank. Other family members, just totally blank look on their face. The only one that ever showed any emotion in the courtroom was Brendan's mother,
right?
Which is Stephen Avery's sister.
Now, do you think that was just like being overwhelmed or do you think it was just reactions from pretty dim-witted people not realizing the gravity of what was going on?
It's a little of column A, a little of column B. I think a little bit of column C, too. I think, as I said, I think Steve Avery is a sociopath. I think some of his other family members are sociopaths, too. But, it's... Those are... I mean, that's really my conclusion. I've turned this over in my head every which way you can, and I just can't think of any other way any other conclusion to arrive at. I think that I think they're guilty. I think that there's probably a whole bunch of other, maybe not murders, but other things that the various members of the Avery brood did that they did not get caught for. It's possible, and
don't you think that one of them would have admitted it by now?
No, I don't think they did it. Like, I don't think his family members committed the murder. I think that's Steve just lashing out, trying to play any desperate card he can to get out of jail.
No, I'm saying Brendan or Stephen. Don't you think that right now they would have admitted this? I mean,
No.
They've been in jail for like 9 years now.
No. I mean, a lot of people will just, like I said, if someone's a sociopath, they're masters at like knowing what people want to hear and developing a story and sticking to it, and almost believing their own lies. And I think that's what we may be dealing with here. But that part of the equation has been dealt with. The Avery clan. Now it's time to deal with the corruption in the police. That's what I want. I would like to see a part 2 to this series where they investigate those cops. Because think about if they did that in this one case, how many other cases did they tamper with evidence in? Every case they've ever worked on has been called into question now.
That's true. I mean, this is the beginning of... This is just a first chapter of a new documentary that could certainly be in the works. But yeah, what a great investigation. I mean, there's so much evidence already there. I think there ought to be another documentary made.
Yeah, like the defense attorney said, no defense attorney ever wants to accuse the police of framing their client. Like, that is probably the hardest thing you can ever do, is
Right.
to prove that. But at the same time, who would know better how to frame someone than a cop?
Yeah, you're right.
They know how to set up a crime scene. It's their job to know how a crime scene looks, and these people had means, motive, and opportunity to do it.
You're absolutely right about that. Absolutely right. So maybe the innocence of Stephen Avery is a moot point at this stage, and the next battle and more realistic one to win is condemning and prosecuting the members of the police department involved.
Yep.
So,
well,
yeah.
Crazy story, and I'm sure more and more stuff is going to come out as the weeks come out, because this is a hot topic right now. Not a gothic clothing store, but a trending story in the news, and more stuff is going to be coming out, I'm sure, and we'll keep you all posted on that. But looks like we're almost out of time. Will, any other things you want to throw out there to the audience before we take off for this week?
Couple final thoughts. I think that we'll see in the next couple months that there's going to be a lot of publicity around the Avery family, and I think they're going to be trying to cash in on this in any way they possibly can. So we'll look for that. Interviews on the cover of People magazine, shit like that.
Yeah.
So who knows? Who knows what more evidence will surface, and we'll certainly be updating everybody on that.
We certainly will. Well, that's all for this week, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page. Give us a like on there. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating on iTunes. You can find us on YouTube. Its YouTube channel is False Flag Nation. Episodes go up there as well, and on Twitter at False Flag Nation. That's all for this week. This is Joseph DeMarco signing out.
All right.
William Revere, can you hear me there?
And William Revere, as always, be... hang on, I gotta do that again.
God, I have to do so much editing.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. This is William Revere. We'll see you next week.
Thoughts out.
Gotta do some